I knew something was off the moment the email subject line read. Mandatory all hands, conference room A 9 a.m. sharp. Nobody uses caps like that unless it's a funeral or a promotion, and since nobody had died yet, I already had a bad feeling. Still, I brushed the lint off my blazer, grabbed my notebook, and walked in like everything was fine. Coffee still warm. Smile still intact. Inside, the room buzzed with that fake enthusiasm people conjure when they smell bullshit, but haven't located the source yet. Then came the words that scraped across my eardrum like nails on a goddamn whiteboard. Let's all congratulate our new director of operations, Rachel. Applause broke out like a pity rash. Scattered. Reluctant. Rachel beamed like she'd just cured cancer. Arms raised like she was accepting a Grammy instead of being handed a title she hadn't earned. 11 months. 11 months of PowerPoint theater and stolen credit. I'd spent 5 years holding the bones of this company together with duct tape, caffeine, and sheer willpower. But sure, let's give the crown to Miss, I'm a thought leader on LinkedIn. She launched into a speech laced with every self-help buzzword she could regurgitate. Collaboration, innovation, synergy. Like a walking TED Talk nobody asked for. Someone actually wooed when she mentioned team spirit. I wanted to throw my coffee, but I just nodded, smiled, and pretended like I hadn't just been publicly shoved off a cliff in heels. I caught my boss Greg watching me. His smile looked more like a grimace. He knew exactly what he'd done. Or maybe he didn't. That would have required some self-awareness. And hey, since you're already here, listening to this train wreck of a tale, do me a favor. Tap that like button and subscribe. 97% of people forget, but it genuinely helps the team behind this mess keep going. Thanks. Anyway, back to the circus. The second the meeting ended, I didn't say a word. Just walked straight back to my desk, calm as still water. No rage. No tears. That comes later, when you're weak. I wasn't weak. I was calculating. While Rachel was basking in the glow of her shiny new title, I pulled open a drawer and took out the plain white envelope I'd prepared 2 weeks ago. Because deep down I'd known. I'd felt the shift. The sudden exclusion from leadership meetings. The cold silence when I brought up risk metrics. The way Rachel always somehow volunteered to present my workflows. I watched Rachel fake laugh with a junior manager like we were all besties now. She didn't even glance at me. Perfect. I didn't want her to see this coming. Greg was alone in his office, scrolling his phone like a teenager. I knocked once, stepped in, and handed him the envelope. What's this? He said, looking confused. My resignation, I said, smiling. Effective Friday. Congrats to Rachel. He blinked. Are you serious? Dead serious, Greg. But I just smiled again and walked out before he could say another word. By 4:45 p.m., the day had already dragged itself into that weird corporate twilight where the office feels half dead and everyone's faking productivity while watching the clock. Greg was still holed up in his glass-walled office, the kind of space that screams, I forward emails for a living, scrolling like whatever was on his phone could save him from what was coming. I walked in without knocking. Just opened the door like it was any other Tuesday. And in a way it was, except this Tuesday, I was done playing the game. I placed the envelope on his desk like I was dropping off a receipt for a sandwich. Neat. Unassuming. But it might as well have been a detonator. He didn't even look up at first. What's this? He muttered, still scrolling. My resignation, I said, soft. Calm. Effective Friday. That got his attention. He sat up like he'd just realized the pilot wasn't in the cockpit. What? He opened the envelope, scanned the page, and then stared at me like I'd just confessed to arson. Are you serious? I nodded. Congrats to Rachel. She earned it. The words left my mouth like velvet, smooth and slow, with just enough frost under the surface to make him squint. His eyes flicked from the paper to my face, waiting for a punchline. There wasn't one. You're not being rational, he said, leaning back, trying to smile like we were friends. We can figure this out. Maybe give it a few weeks. No need, I cut in. It's done. He started scrambling, talking about bonuses, internal mobility, how I could help mentor Rachel through the transition. Like I was going to stick around and be the ghost in the attic while she played dress up with my title. Let's talk tomorrow, he said. No need to rush decisions. I looked at the clock on the wall behind him. Greg, it's not rushed. It's overdue. I just waited long enough for you to confirm who matters here. His jaw worked like he wanted to say something righteous, something managerial, but nothing came out. That's the thing about men like Greg. They think silence is a weapon until someone else uses it first. I left without slamming the door. No need for fireworks. The most terrifying thing in an office like ours isn't anger, it's composure. And I had plenty. 5 years of it. 5 years of taking the lead without the credit. Of putting out fires Rachel didn't even know existed. Of being the actual backbone of operations while she posted team selfies and called it leadership. By the time I reached my desk, Rachel was in the kitchenette reheating soup and bragging to someone on the phone about her big step forward. I walked right past her. Didn't flinch. She didn't even notice. Of course she didn't. I shut down my computer one window at a time, no rush. Slid a flash drive into my bag. Not because I needed the files, but because they'd forget I ever built those tools unless I reminded them later. Cleaned out a few folders. Logged out of the deeper systems. You'd think a company would do better about access control, but when you're invisible long enough, they forget what doors you built. By the time I zipped up my bag, the office was quiet again. Nobody knew the storm had already begun. The office felt different by Tuesday morning. Not louder, not quieter, just sharper. Like the air had tension baked into it. You could feel people glancing over their monitors more than usual, whispering near the coffee station, peeking into my cube when they thought I wasn't looking. The news had spread fast. By lunch, it wasn't just idle gossip. It was a quiet reckoning. Rachel tried to pretend like everything was fine, like her promotion wasn't already cracking under its own glitter. But the thing about fake confidence? It doesn't survive live fire. Her first real test came at 11:15 when one of our legacy clients, high maintenance, high value, called in with a billing discrepancy on a priority contract. I was 2 cubes away. Heard the whole thing. Well, that's not really my area, Rachel stammered, already flustered. Let me loop in. Oh wait, who usually handles this again? She fumbled through folders she didn't understand, tossing around words like workflow and visibility, like they'd summon an answer from the corporate gods. The client got curt, then annoyed, then hung up. She sat there blinking at the screen like it betrayed her. By mid-afternoon, the whispers had turned into cautious foot traffic. You really leaving? Asked Devin from procurement, eyes darting like we were trading state secrets. Yeah, I said, calm as ever. He chewed his lip. You sure about that? Very. He nodded and left, but the look he gave me said what no one wanted to say out loud. We're screwed without you. Over the next 3 days, I was everywhere and nowhere. Walking the halls. Closing tabs. Smiling. Helping, but only where I had to. I returned the obvious stuff. Template libraries, shared folders, training decks. All neat. All shallow. The skeleton of what I'd built, stripped of the organs that made it breathe. Because the real operations engine? It lived in my head. 5 years of nuanced systems, client expectations, compliance hacks, internal workarounds, vendor relationship landmines. None of it documented. None of it repeatable. By design. I cleared my personal logins one by one. Slack integrations. Legacy dashboards I'd built from scratch. Access to our vendor portal routing system. All under the radar. IT wouldn't even notice until it was too late, because they never tracked the right things. Everyone assumes control lives in titles or credentials. It doesn't. It lives in familiarity. In the quiet knowledge of which system hangs if you process an invoice before 9 a.m. on the last Thursday of the month. In knowing that the client from Jacksonville expects a happy birthday email every August 4th or they'll threaten to pull a $6 million contract. I didn't write that down. Why would I? Rachel didn't even know those things existed. Greg certainly didn't. He was still trying to coax me into some kind of exit interview, probably hoping I'd change my mind. I ignored every calendar invite he sent. My time was no longer up for auction. The only handoff I offered was a half-page bullet list titled, Suggested Transition Notes. It read more like a cheat sheet for a sitcom plot than a systems blueprint. And I made sure every bullet ended with vague phrases like, monitor as needed, or check for inconsistencies, because I knew they wouldn't know what any of it meant. That was the beauty of being the quiet one. No one saw you plant the seeds. So when the garden dies, they don't even know what they lost. Not yet. But it was coming. You could feel it. Rachel smiled too hard in meetings now. Talked too fast. Used phrases like strategic alignment when someone asked about overdue vendor reports. Her eyes darted every time someone said my name, which happened more and more as things got weirdly slower. She couldn't fake infrastructure. Not for long. Not with what was missing. But me? I slept just fine. Friday showed up like it had something to prove. The sky was gray, heavy with the kind of Midwestern humidity that makes your skin feel like it's been emotionally compromised. I got in early, before the rest of the office started buzzing, because I didn't want the awkward hallway goodbyes or the you'll be missed lies. No veluns. No cupcakes. No forced group photo with people who still thought my name was Matt. By lunchtime, it was clear there'd be no farewell lunch. Which was perfect. The company had a tradition of doing a sheet cake in the break room when someone left, a blank slab with best wishes, piped on like it was punishment. HR would gather people like hostages and force applause. But for me? Nothing. Not even a group email. Just silence dressed up as professionalism. Exactly how I wanted it. I didn't box up my desk. There was nothing worth taking. 5 years in the same gray cubicle, and all I had to show for it was a cracked mug, a backup phone charger, and a chair with my lumbar groove carved into it like a fossil. My laptop was wiped. My badge already resting on Greg's desk like a forgotten relic. The last thing I did before leaving was pull open the second drawer of my desk and stick a small yellow post-it inside. I didn't sign it. Didn't even fold it. Just stuck it dead center in the empty drawer like a landmine she wouldn't see coming. You'll figure it out. Eventually. And maybe she would. But not before the fire started. At 3:46 p.m., I slung my backpack over one shoulder and walked past the finance bullpen like it was any other Friday. The only person who looked up was Marta, who gave me a small nod, the kind people give at funerals when they don't have the words. I stepped onto the elevator alone. Pressed 1. No fanfare. No parting speech. Just the whir of metal and the faint hum of fluorescent lights overhead. When the door slid open, I walked straight out without looking back. The truth is, they wouldn't notice what I left behind until it started to rot. Every system still technically worked. The lights were on, the emails still sending. But beneath the surface? It was a ghost town. No one had eyes on the vendor escalation loop. The compliance triggers? I had written those into macros no one else knew existed. Half the dashboards Rachel would rely on were manually maintained behind permissions she no longer had access to. Not because I sabotaged anything. Because they'd never asked how things functioned. They just assumed. They thought operations ran on software. I knew it ran on memory. By the time I hit the parking lot, the late summer sun had burned a hole in the clouds, casting that sharp golden light that makes even a grim corporate park look poetic. I took one last breath of the overmulched landscaping and got in my car. Rolled the windows down. Turned on the radio. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just felt done. And done is peaceful. Done is clean. Done meant I was free. Inside that building, the countdown had already started. They just didn't know it yet. Monday opened with the illusion of normalcy, clean floors, the smell of burnt Keurig pods, and Rachel clacking through the hallway in those heels she wore when she wanted to be taken seriously. She even brought donuts. That's how you knew she was trying too hard. Box of glazed peace offerings dumped on the kitchen table, like sugar would mask the rot. By 9:02 a.m., the illusion snapped. The weekly priority sync was always run at 9 sharp. 5 years of rhythm, baked into the bones of the company. I used to do it without thinking. Launch the dashboard, parse vendor delays, reroute priorities, flag red zones, and get leadership their talking points before they could spill coffee on their overpriced laptops. But this time, Rachel sat down, opened the dashboard file on her new shiny tablet, and hit refresh. Nothing. Blank screen. Then an error code that looked like hieroglyphics. Then the rainbow wheel of corporate death. She tried again. And again. By the third click, her forehead was already glistening. Hey, she called to one of the IT guys slouched in a hoodie across the room. The priority board isn't loading. Can you fix it? He lumbered over, clicked around for about 30 seconds, then shrugged. Yeah, that was built custom. Looks like it's linked to a secured script on a private repo. We don't have access. Who does? The silence that followed? It should have been printed and framed. Nathan, the tech finally muttered. Rachel's smile fell an inch. Okay, so just rebuild it. Sure, the guy said. If we had the logic. But that script's probably layered. Not documented either. She tried to laugh it off, make a joke about overcomplicated old systems, but her voice cracked halfway through. That's when the emails started. First from logistics, then client success, then procurement. All of them asking the same thing. Where's the Monday rollout update? See, what Rachel didn't know, and what no one had told her, was that my dashboard didn't just track tasks. It pulled from 5 different systems, triangulated supplier data, highlighted compliance gaps, and auto-prioritized risk items for legal and finance. It was the entire operational circulatory system. And it was gone. Rachel fired off a few vague replies. We're just updating some tools. We'll have visibility soon. Corporate speak, for we have no clue what the hell is going on. By noon, the VP was standing over her desk, red in the face and voice lowered to that sharp whisper men use when they're not quite ready to scream in public. What do you mean it's gone? Rachel flailed, tried to pivot. Well, apparently Nathan built it custom, and you were supposed to own this by now. I thought IT had backups, she hissed. The VP turned to the IT guy. Do you? He shrugged. We've got backups of the files, but not the logic that lived in the scripts. They were external, nothing replicable. We'd need to reverse engineer the whole thing from scratch. The VP's silence said everything. Meanwhile, clients were noticing delays. One sent an email with the subject line, "Stability concerns." Another asked if we were going through restructuring. Rachel told them we were modernizing workflows. I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered her speech. Her grin. Her casual erasure of everything I'd built. She thought she could wear the title like a costume. She thought systems ran on vibes and hashtags. Now she was standing in a burning room, trying to blame the blueprints. But I hadn't sabotaged anything. I just took my hands off the wheel. They never realized the whole car only moved because I was driving it blindfolded. By Tuesday, the slowdown was no longer just a glitch. It was a full-body corporate migraine. The kind where everything technically functions, but nothing actually works. Rachel was drowning in it, but still showed up in power blazers and empty confidence, spewing phrases like realigning the workflow horizon and exploring redundancy pivots. Translation. She had no clue what the hell was going on. Invoice routing died next. Our finance team flagged it during the Tuesday stand-up when 37 vendor payments bounced back due to validation errors. Rachel blinked at the screen like it had insulted her personally. Just reprocess them manually, she said. The finance lead's face went pale. We can't. The routing matrix references Nathan's vendor index. None of us have the latest version. Check the shared drive. There is no shared drive, someone muttered. Rachel tried to brush it off. Okay, well, let's just rebuild it. It can't be that complicated. Only it was. Because vendor tracking wasn't just spreadsheets and logins. It was context. It was why this vendor couldn't be contacted before noon, when that supplier would fake stock availability to hold the PO open longer, and how to juggle invoicing gaps so legal didn't light anyone on fire. That lived in my head. And now it lived nowhere. By Wednesday, compliance started blinking red. The quarterly checkpoint was due, and the standard checklist wasn't in the compliance folder. Rachel blamed, archive mismanagement. The VP wasn't buying it. This should have been turned in Monday, he growled. Why didn't anyone escalate? Rachel floundered. We were pivoting through the operational stack, and some processes were legacy mode. Legacy mode. Jesus. She was reaching for buzzwords like they were life jackets, but nothing was floating. People started realizing the truth. Everything that looked easy before was easy, because someone invisible made it so. And now the invisible one was gone. At 2:14 p.m. on Thursday, the real hit came. One of our biggest enterprise clients, $14 million in projected revenue for the quarter, sent a terse email through their account liaison. Due to recent operational instability and delayed SLA responses, we are placing the rollout on hold pending a full review. That landed like a brick through a window. Rachel held an emergency huddle and tried to put on her calm, visionary leader face. She said things like, "We anticipated growing pains, and this gives us a chance to tighten our strategic scaffolding." Nobody looked convinced. The VP didn't even hide his disgust anymore. "You're getting outmaneuvered by the absence of a person." Rachel's face crumpled for half a second before she caught herself. "We just need to reframe the current obstacles as transitional opportunities." "What we need," he snapped, "is someone who knows what the hell they're doing." That was the first time someone said it out loud. No one had the guts to mention my name, but it was hanging in the air like carbon monoxide. Quiet. Deadly. Unspoken truth poisoning the room. I wasn't there, of course. But I heard about it. People talk when they're scared. And now they were terrified. Systems were unraveling, not because they were broken, but because no one knew how to read them. Rachel thought processes were just tasks you assigned to someone on Slack. She didn't realize the whole engine was custom, built over years, tuned with instinct. And when you lose instinct, you lose control. And they had. Completely. The door to legal slammed hard enough to shake the cheap motivational plaques off their screws. The VP came in hot, shirt wrinkled, tie hanging like a noose, face red with corporate desperation. The legal team had barely looked up when he barked, "Can we bring Nathan back?" For a moment, nobody moved. Then Carol, the senior counsel who'd been there since the building was still drywall, sighed, took off her glasses and said, "Let's take a look." She pulled the file like it was just another boring HR form. Top sheet. My resignation letter. Clean. No drama. Effective Friday, 5 p.m. Below that, my original employment agreement. And then she stopped. Mid-flip. Eyes narrowing like someone had just whispered a threat behind her ear. "What is it?" the VP asked. Suddenly less aggressive. Carol didn't answer. She leaned in. "Read the clause again." Then a third time slower. "Jesus," she muttered. "Carol." She finally looked up. Clause 12.4. It was added during his contract renewal 2 years ago. Quietly. The VP frowned. "So, it states that all original process documentation, operational frameworks, custom systems, and integrations developed by the employee outside of standardized company software remain the intellectual property of the creator unless formally transferred via legal addendum." The room froze. "Wait, are you telling me we don't own any of what he built?" She nodded once. "Not legally, no. Unless we got him to sign a separate transfer agreement, which, according to this, we didn't." The VP's face drained 3 shades lighter. "He put that in there on purpose," he whispered, like saying it out loud made it more dangerous. Carol gave him a long, tired look. "Of course he did. And you all signed off without reading it because you assumed quiet people don't carry knives." For a few seconds, there was nothing but the ticking of the ugly wall clock. Then, a flurry of movement. The VP grabbing his phone. Someone dialing HR. Somebody else trying to locate Rachel. Too late. Rachel was already locked in the small wellness room down the hall, tears silently tracking through her foundation. I only know because someone snapped a picture and texted it to Devin, who then forwarded it to a mutual we both still trusted. She'd been in there since the email about the paused rollout. Door closed. Lights dimmed. One hand pressed to her temple, the other clutching a useless printout of one of my dashboards, now just a skeleton of boxes and broken logic. They said she tried to explain something in a call with the CFO and couldn't finish a sentence without her voice cracking. She had no answers, no backups, no ownership. And now, not even the company did. Because here's the thing no one considered. I never asked for power. I just wrote the blueprint. I kept things running because it was easier than watching them fall apart. But when they handed the keys to someone who couldn't read a map, I made sure the map went with me. No drama. No sabotage. Just legal clarity. They didn't see the panic yet, not fully. But it had started. like smoke creeping under the door before the fire makes its grand entrance. Rachel stayed in that room for over an hour. When she came out, her eyes were puffy and her smile looked like a bruise. The VP didn't even meet her gaze. He was too busy figuring out how to clean up a disaster built entirely from his own arrogance. And legal? Legal just started printing copies of every employee contract in the building. Because if I had slipped that clause in, who else had? By Thursday morning, the office was running on caffeine, denial, and cross fingers. The Monday dashboard failure had become a full-blown chain reaction. Invoice delays turned into vendor disputes triggered contract reviews, and contract reviews uncovered the horrifying truth. No one actually understood how any of the systems worked. Not Rachel. Not Greg. Not legal. Not even the damn consultants they'd scrambled to bring in. Then came the rumors. At first they were small. Whispers near the elevators. A Slack DM that someone saw Nathan across town. No one said the name of the firm aloud, but everyone knew the only other ops-heavy company within walking distance was Arcturon. The rival we'd mocked for years as bloated, outdated, and stuck in the past. Turns out they weren't stuck. They were preparing. That afternoon, Arcturon dropped a press release so clean it could have been laser cut. Arcturon unveils new operational integration division, led by former systems consultant Nathan Bright. A headshot was included. I was wearing the same suit I'd worn to my final day. Arms crossed, soft grin, backdrop of exposed brick and steel. Professional, but unmistakably me. The timing wasn't just precise. It was surgical. Rachel read it first. Her assistant printed it and handed it to her in silence. She stared at it for a full minute before folding it in half and shoving it in her drawer like hiding the page could undo the damage. Greg found out when legal forwarded him the press link subject line. You'll want to see this. The VP? He heard when our biggest client, the one who paused the $14 million rollout, retweeted the article with a simple caption. Excited to see this level of clarity and execution. What followed was nothing short of a corporate collapse in slow motion. Department heads started comparing notes. One by one, they realized Arcturon's new process diagrams looked familiar. Vendor structures mirrored ours. The escalation ladder? Identical in format, only better. The automated compliance tracker? Nearly the same workflow, except this one actually worked. Because I hadn't sabotaged anything. I had relocated. What I'd spent 5 years quietly building didn't die when I left. I took the bones with me, the design, the logic, the fail-safes. And then I cleaned them up, smoothed the edges, and launched them somewhere they'd be respected instead of ignored. Arcturon's rollout was flawless. Every system launched on time. Their vendors gushed about the new interface. Compliance locked into place so cleanly it made some execs wonder if they'd missed a government memo. Internally, they were calling it the Bright Framework. They didn't even try to hide it. Greg sat in his office, door shut, lights off, probably rereading emails from 6 months ago, where I warned him about process fragility and system dependencies. The ones he'd flagged as low priority. Rachel? She tried to recover. Spoke in meetings about rebuilding stronger, about opportunities for leaner systems. But everyone could see it in her eyes. She knew. They all did. I hadn't been a cog in the machine. I was the machine. And now that machine was humming, just not for them. They realized too late that operations wasn't about titles or org charts. It was about depth, consistency, precision. Things they'd traded for flash and charisma. I wasn't angry. I didn't gloat. I was too busy working. I had a new team now, one that listened. They gave me a corner office, but I still preferred the war room. No windows, just whiteboards, data streams, and people who ask questions instead of pretending to know the answers. Vindication isn't loud. It doesn't need applause. Sometimes, it just looks like a clean rollout and a stunned silence across town. The envelope showed up on a Tuesday, hand-delivered, unmarked, resting quietly on the CEO's mahogany desk like a paper ghost. No logo. No return address. Just his name in clean block letters, and inside 3 simple lines handwritten on thick cream stationery. You promoted style. I built substance. Don't confuse visibility with value. N. That was it. No threat. No demand. Just a mirror held to the face of a man who'd spent years mistaking noise for impact. He read it twice. Once for the message, once for the meaning. Then he folded it neatly and placed it in the top drawer next to a now pointless plaque that read, "Leadership is influence." By then, Rachel was already gone. The official email used the phrase "transitioned out," but everyone knew what it meant. One day she was there, high heels over confidence, PowerPoints with too many gradients, and the next her desk was empty. No goodbye message. No farewell notes. Just the faint chemical scent of citrus wipes and a void where the self-declared strategic lead had been. Her legacy? A stack of failed rollouts, confused vendors, a lawsuit pending over SLA breaches, and a folder full of buzzwords that couldn't fix a coffee maker, let alone a company. The VP didn't last the week. His resignation came at 4:17 p.m. on a Thursday, time-stamped just minutes after internal audit filed their preliminary report. 16 undocumented workflows traced to a single former employee. For major compliance lapses flagged. A $14 million client still on pause, pending clarity that no one could provide. Audit called it a systemic dependency on non-transferred intellectual property. But the staff? They called it the bright gap. The CEO ordered a full review. Legal redlined their contracts. IT quietly installed a new access tracking platform and started forcing documentation uploads with every new tool request. HR brought in consultants to teach managers how to identify and retain high-value personnel. But by then, the damage had been done. No one said my name. They didn't have to. Meanwhile, across town, I was in a room with no windows, surrounded by whiteboards and sharp minds. My new team didn't care where I came from. They cared that everything worked. That invoices flowed, vendors smiled, compliance stayed clean. That their lives were easier, faster, calmer. I didn't want another title. I wanted permanence. So I built something different. A mentorship program, quiet and precise. No flashy slogans. No LinkedIn posts. Just real guidance, documented logic, strategic frameworks, systems that would outlast any one person. I trained analysts who didn't just know how to push buttons, but knew why the buttons mattered. My rule was simple. If you build it, teach it. If you automate it, explain it. If you leave it behind, make sure no one drowns in your wake. They asked if I wanted to name the program. I said no. Because this time, I didn't want to be seen. I wanted to be irreplaceable by design.